So let's get into the meat of things. So 2010 is the year the Quicken Loans and the family companies moved downtown. But the decision was made several years before that.
Yep.
What did you see? Why Detroit? Why now? What did you see that others didn't in 2007, 8, 9, 10?
Well, for us as a business, and look, I had my head down for like 20 years, between early 20s and, probably my early 40s, just building a business and not really looking up too much. And we're in the suburbs of Detroit, and by that time, by the there's no real name for that decade between 0 and 10, but the early 2000s, I guess. In the middle of that decade, we knew all of our leases were coming due at the end of the decade. We really had three choices. You either could, continue on and sign new leases in those buildings, which was a cumbersome sort of affair, not a real good way to operate. We could go get some vacant piece of land somewhere and build a campus that had about as much attraction to me as just, doing nothing, because that was just, why do you want to be so insulated like that? And I don't think that's a great way. Or really the only other options to come to downtown Detroit, where I've always loved it here, love the buildings, love the people, and make a go of it. Now, at that time, we moved 1,400 of our people. And look, when you make a major move like that, you're always thinking to yourself, is this going to work out? What's happening? But when I tell you from day one, I don't mean day two, Steve, day one, even Detroit in 2010, which is, it's only 7.5, almost 8 years ago. I mean, it's Detroit and almost is like in dog years now. So much is happening. Right. 7.5 years is almost like 40 years, but it was only 7.5 years ago. But even back then, the first day, there's just something about it. I just knew it was the right choice by the afternoon. I mean it, by the first day. In fact, when we used to go out to our other locations, we hadn't moved them yet. People were like, when do we get to move? Because they had all toured it and seen what's going on. And I had never worked in any urban core, let alone Detroit. It's just a different feeling. There's a feeling of energy, vitality, diversity, different, people from different places. It's a better, it's an environment more conducive for ideas and innovation and thought and discussion than sort of a suburban office park where you park, asphalt, go into the building, come out. It's a more full experience. I think everybody knows that from day one. One of the other things I wanted to say here on this is that a lot of people say to us, you've done this in Detroit, done that in Detroit. Detroit is giving back just as much as we have. We would not be the big business today that we are if we were spread out in any suburban area. There's just absolutely no question about it. And I think it's very, very important to stress that, because to sustain growth, sustain job creation, everything, to businesses, you have to appeal to both sides of it, right? Yeah, you can appeal to the part of them that wants to be part of something great and big and job creation and all that, but also appeal that, look, this is good for your business. This is a smart move to make, and we feel that, no question about it. So it's not just something like we're a one-way thing here. This has been, we have taken just as much back, and we couldn't be more excited about the future.
Yeah, as my role is government affairs, it's my job to understand some of the negotiations that took place in the move down here. And one of those was a development agreement that included projections. And so at the time, we knew if we emptied the suburbs into 3 locations, it would be 1,500 people. But we projected perhaps we can get 3,000 down here, 3,500 with some room for growth. Today, we're at 17,000?
17,000.
17,000 people work downtown or on the payroll paying Detroit City taxes today. Yeah. We undersold ourselves because we negotiated like parking concessions based on 3,000 people. So, but I say that to move on. So you own a lot of real estate in town, right? So what's your strategy behind the acquisition of all this real estate? Well, and what are you trying to achieve with this?
It's a good question. So first of all, by nature or by our experience, we were not real estate people. Like, we're finance people and entrepreneurial folks and technology people. So the real estate was really just a function initially of need. Like I was telling you, we moved those 1,400 people. At that time, we had about 2,000 or 3,000 more to go. And there was, you look outside and say, well, that's a beautiful building that's close by. That's a beautiful building that's close by. That time, the banks owned it. And so, we went ahead and bought them. Now it kept going from there as things got real interesting. And some of the stuff you've got to do is what I call defensive ownership. So, you can have great landlords on a block, whether this is residential or commercial, right, in a neighborhood, or you can have like 5 owners who care, who pay their taxes, who do a great job, and then there could be one in the middle who doesn't, and that can actually have very negative effects on the whole block, whether that's commercial or residential. So what we did is we started saying, look, if it's available, let's get it, let's sort of inventory it, and then if a good user comes along who's going to pay their taxes and create a great business or whatever it is going to be there and create jobs and pay, let's go ahead and spin it back out. And we've done that 2 or 3 times, and we want to do it more. So for us, I know it's, hey, one guy comes in and buys everything. It's just, to me, it's about the intent and what are the noble purposes of those people who are doing it. And ours, I think, are, if we haven't made it clear now, I think it should be clear anyway of what we're trying to do here. And we're here for, people say, what's your time frame? And my answer is forever. I mean, there's nowhere. I mean, we're here. This is it. Detroit's our home. It's the rest of my life. This is here, my adult life. This is it. Our capital, our people. And the other thing too is it's not just about money. It's about the people. I mean, we deploy. Our people are involved. Every single person is involved to some way, shape, or form in what our overall mission. And in fact, one example, Steve, that I like to give is Detroit Public Schools on the diplomas. When people, whoever they were, graduated Detroit Public Schools, could not get their records verified because it just, for whatever reason. So we have this year project as an example. We have, I think, 200 or 300 people a week for a year went ahead. We created this technology, scanned in all the diplomas, and now anybody graduated from like the 1950s till today can get their. And this is the kind of thing that companies can do, because again, it's not just throwing money; it's also throwing human capital and having the people that are invested from their heart and their soul to get in and do stuff. And
behind noble purposes. Noble purposes,
and that's one of the many examples that we can hopefully make a difference.
And part of that is a barrier to entry, right? You oftentimes for most entry-level jobs, you're going to need proof that you graduated, and there are a lot of people that fell victim to that. So that was one of the projects that we took on. So people often ask me, and you just alluded to it, what's your exit strategy? It sounds like you just answered.
Yeah, we don't have an exit. There's no exit strategy except to be here for the long term, for generations or whatever. We have to, and I think we have to look at things not only as a city but as a state and even a country. And we got to look at things as a long term, infrastructure investments. So we almost look at like our private infrastructure investments the same way I think government should be anyway, looking at roads or utilities or whatever it might be. We want to be here for the long run. We want to create opportunity. We want to create the environment. If you sort of look at us as like a garden, that's how we look at it. If we can create great soil, great sunlight, great fertilizer, and great I'm missing one of them: sunlight, fertilizer, soil. That's about it, right? Water. Okay, great water, and then those seeds are going to flourish. And those seeds, in our case, entrepreneurial development. I think that's a subject of what you're talking about today, economic entrepreneurial development. You could take the same seed, put it in a bad garden, may grow a little bit, put it in a great garden, it flourishes. In my view, businesses, especially small entrepreneur business, same thing. We have to create the conditions, the environment, the ecosystem where seeds can flourish in a big way. And I think that should be really the essence of the whole discussion, because once you have that in place, man, it's amazing what people can do and get done.
You're leading me to the next question. So let me start by acknowledging part of the theme of this conference is the tale of two cities. We hear the narrative a lot. Do you believe that the recovery of the downtown market can lift all boats? Is it possible for that market alone to lift all boats? And if so, how? What do you see working in our benefit with a restored downtown? And what are you doing in neighborhoods?
Okay, so first of all, great question, and one we hear posed often. I think the question is, shouldn't be really, are there tale of two cities? There's one city, and there's different parts of a city that must all be healthy for any part of it to work, in my opinion, in the long run. So you can't have, in fact, I've challenged people, name me a city that has a great downtown, but all the neighborhoods are just declining and it's forever and it's over. But people think the downtown is still going to grow. It can't happen for a lot of reasons, many reasons. Nor can the reverse happen. Oh, all these great flourishing neighborhoods, but a downtown that's dying. First of all, most jobs in today's world, today's economy, in urban cores, not all, but most, the kind of jobs that we're talking about, the higher wage, jobs where folks have either done training, put themselves through training. You don't even need a college degree today, which is a little bit of a fallacy, but it's great if you have one, but you don't need one to do real well. But they tend to be in the urban core of downtown. So downtown should be a job-producing machine. And where do people live? when they're working in the downtown. You actually have a map. I don't know is there a slide? Is that slide up there? I could show you the map.
There it is.
This is a shocking thing to us. So each one of those dots represents one of our full-time people and where they live in the city of Detroit. Now, there's close to 4,000. And and this was a shock to me. In fact, I told our HR people, go back 3 different times, it can't be right. Because I asked them, I said about 2 years ago, I said, tell me where our people live in the city. Show me on a map with dots. And I thought it was going to be around downtown. You know, we were going to shoot 4 and 5 neighborhoods around downtown would be the majority of them, and the rest maybe sparsely populated. And then over here, you know, this is what it is. And it was truly, to me even, it was a shock. And this is what I'm talking about, where the neighborhoods in downtown are just completely and totally connected. If there's jobs downtown, and I'm not against or don't think we should have jobs in neighborhoods, we should have as many jobs everywhere as we can, but the reality of the situation, most of them in today's world, and the ones you compete with for other cities, are in a downtown core. But the great news is look where everybody lives. I mean, and look, you have a great job, buy a house, you know, take care of that house, property values go up in that whole neighborhood. And it feeds itself. Wealth is created. People forget that wealth is created by people. I mean, wealth is not something that just appears or the government creates it. It's created by human beings, by people, by businesses, and it can have a self-perpetuating sort of effect to it, a multiplier effect. And you know, this is the kind of thing this is about one of the most exciting things ever. Because when I saw that, then we got with our people and we said, look, let's go in and do as much as we can in neighborhoods. We don't broadcast a lot of the stuff we do, but you know, some of the stuff that happens with property taxes and all this stuff. So we have a whole team of people that have made some major moves, Steve, this year, last 2 years, to help people not lose their homes because of that. Because we want to stabilize neighborhoods everywhere. We have a rehab and ready program. I mean, all these details, I guess I could sit up here and sort of do all of this, and I don't want to do that. I want to kind of keep you a little bit, maybe at 10,000 feet, and then we could talk details further. But needless to say, you know, there's thousands of people who would have lost their homes in the last year if our 450 people we didn't hire, and they were all Detroiters, didn't knock on everyone's home. There were 65,000 homes that were in tax delinquency, distressed, and we sent them to knock on them and said, do you know that you can do this poverty exemption, or you can get your homestead thing filled out, or whatever it might be. And thousands of people didn't even know. I mean, they don't even know about it, which is crazy.
It was a great partnership with Wayne County and the Treasurer's Office.
Yes, it was a great part. The county, the city, us. These are the things, again, with people. So it's what I want to stress to everybody. It's not just companies coming with capital. If company's mission, if a business's mission goes above and beyond, we call ourselves a more than profit, which means, you know, not a profit. We want to produce profits. Most of them happen to go back in the city, but we want to be more than profit. We want to be motivated by the mission. If you have that, your people and your capital can do great things, especially if you have great partnership with the city and the county that you're in.
Which is good, because it leads me to the next one. I'll move quickly through these. The role of A, government, B, private sector, C, philanthropy. Can you help? How do we work? How do you work with those entities? And is one more important than the other?
Okay, so interestingly enough, one of the things people would tell me before we moved down here was, oh, you know, you're going to just wait till you see the county and the city and the this and the that. And I just never had any personal experience of that. I didn't want to buy any of that stuff until, you know, I'm going to just see what's the truth. We get down here, and I have to tell you, we've not experienced that. It is what it is. We just have not experienced significant negative forces in any of those areas. In fact, it's been the opposite. Now, maybe we came because the city is going through its whole transformation, bankruptcy, and all that business, and it's easy to get everybody, you know, with religion, I guess, when you file municipal bankruptcy, right? And everybody's paddling in the same direction now. But that's probably part of it. But I have to tell you, the kind of stuff I heard and all the kind of nonsense I heard just hasn't happened. I think people, no matter who you are, what color you are, how old you are, people want the same things. They want the same things for their family, for their kids, for their city. And it's just a matter of communication and talking. And then, as long as those entities we've said it already, have noble purposes and are about the what's best, not who, you know, who said this and who said that, things tend to go in a great direction. I think all three of those groups are in that case right now. And I think we're all paddling in the same direction. You just have to sort of sometimes ignore the noise. You know, nothing's perfect, right? So there might be one or two things you don't like about what they did, or they don't like what we did, but you can't judge your entire relationships. If you do that, sooner or later you've got nobody, right?
Right.
And so we all work together fairly well.
So I often describe you as a serial entrepreneur. You're north of 100 different operating companies or such. Is Detroit an entrepreneurial town?
Well, I think it was for sure. We all know the stories with the car companies and all that stuff. And then I think as it became a union town, I think the discussions at dinner for the most part would, go ahead and get a job, one of the car companies or one of the related companies. You're going to be in the union and you're going to be taken care of and get great benefits. You're going to do that. And you're going to retire after 30 years. And that worked. That model worked for a while. And that doesn't mean there weren't entrepreneurs along that time, because there were. And even in the city, there's numerous entrepreneurs and have been always. But the majority, I think, of the discussion changed. And I think now today, almost out of need, but it's in a way a blessing in disguise, because I think Detroit is now becoming an unbelievable entrepreneurial town now. Goes everything from technology businesses to supply businesses to neighborhood businesses. And that's what I was talking about earlier. We have to support the ecosystem. When I say we, I mean everybody, but particularly those three groups you're talking about. Create the best conditions and environment and support that we can for entrepreneurial businesses to grow. An entrepreneurial business in its first few years is as sensitive as and I have a five times experience with 5 kids, is a 1 or 2 or 3 or 4-year-old. Like, you can go either way, really quickly, right? Depending on how you guys all know this and how you create the conditions around them. And I think that's what will happen. And I have to tell you, you do that, it's like magic. I've seen it. There's people in this. I don't know if my friend Regina's here in her story. There you are. I always use you as an example. Because she's a friend of mine in House of Pure Vin, and watched her struggles and challenges and all that, but she's just determined to just make it happen. On Woodward, I advise you to go, best wine place around, there's examples like that, and there's more than Regina. There's many examples of minority or people of color who own businesses, whatever it might be, all over the place, and it keeps happening, and now people see Regina as a role model, and now they want to do it. So they have that kind of effect. So anyway, I could go on into stuff as it fires me up.
So let's get into access of capital.
Yep.
So access of capital has always been challenging for entrepreneurs, particularly African American or people of color. How do you level a playing field? How do folks that are starting their businesses off? I guess there are a couple levels of entrepreneurship, right? There's the startup businesses that get their 1 to 2 year start, and then there's the businesses from 3 to 5 years that also have needs, and they're at that tipping point in which success or failure hinges on capital. Oftentimes, you have an interesting take on entrepreneurship and capital, access to capital. Can you share with us the adage about money never leading?
One of our isms. I guess you guys on the way out. There's I don't want to spill all this on you, Steve. You'll get 2 books. You get normally $19.99 plus shipping and handling.
But today,
not for this crowd. But this is our isms, our culture book, there's 19 sort of cutesy statements, but we really do believe in them. They drive us. They drive our priorities, our decision-making, behaviors, action. That's this isn't. But one of them that Steve's talking about is, and I've always believed this, that money and numbers, don't lead, they follow. They don't follow. What leads is the idea, the motivation, the excitement, the energy, the thought, and then money and numbers follow that. I think people, when they chase the money first, they tend not to have a lot of it, right? Mm-hmm. Ironically, So that's going back to your question about capital. First of all, I guess I would answer this question 2 ways. If you're an individual entrepreneur, like I use Regina's example, but I'm sure there's others in this room. You're an individual entrepreneur. You just have to make a decision. You have to just decide. I'm going to find whatever I need. This is going to be the priority. I will find a way. Period. And once you make that decision, I just know you're going to find a way. I don't care again whether you're white, black, old, young, male, female. You just have to make that decision, and I've seen it. I've seen it in people who get to that point, and once they cross it, they find a way. It's hard to explain. I know I'm not being exactly the most crystal clear in this, but I do think it's more of a belief system, a belief thing, and you'll find whether it's friends and family or banks or small business loans or other entrepreneurs or venture capital funds, whatever it might be, okay? You just can't stop. Can't stop at the first no. In fact, you don't even have the conversation. The first conversation doesn't even start until you get your first no. Like everyone to me, when somebody says no, I'm really happy because now I know they said no. Now I can start figuring out how to determine yes. It's when they're in the valley of the vagueness that I get concerned. I can't get, and I don't know where to go when they're vague. So, don't be deterred by the first no is that's where it all starts. That's where we start talking, right? Now, take your question up higher to 20,000 feet. So this country, something happened in the financial crisis 10 years ago, 11 years ago, and that is the banks of this country, big, small, and medium, were pretty much told stop business lending. They don't loan to businesses, particularly entrepreneurial businesses, because maybe there were losses during that time. I can't tell you exactly.
Particularly in African American and places of color.
Because those are the places that need it the most. They need capital the most. For decades and decades, for many reasons we all know, there's been less of it, right? So they're certainly going to feel the effect of it more than anybody. So now these alternative type lenders come around, and some of them are pretty good, some of them are pretty decent, but some of them are not, and they're not good places. And there was an article in the paper over the weekend locally, I forgot which. Well, I guess it's one paper on a weekend, one big paper. But there was an article about going and getting personal loans online and have the hidden fees, and so that you just have to be smart on that stuff. Capital. I think capital is like cholesterol. Like there's good capital and bad capital. Like good cholesterol, bad cholesterol. Like you can get capital, but if the interest rate is ridiculous and the terms are abusive, and it's going to create. The worst part about that is the mental fatigue and overhang that bad capital creates. It's not even necessarily it's bad enough. Yeah, the rates are high and there's more money and you could lose your assets and all that, but it's distracting for the entrepreneur. So that you want to have good capital, right? Now, like First Independence Bank here, who I've met with, and who we recently put some capital in because we believe in the management of the bank. Hopefully we create more. That's what I mean by a condition. I mean, there shouldn't just be one in the city. There should be 20 of those kinds of banks.
Working with Kenneth Kelly and his staff.
Right, but we need, nothing, not Kenneth Kelly's person. We don't want that much competition, but you know what I'm saying, right? You want to have more of that. That's a bank, but that's an entrepreneurial operation. Was it Don Davis and his wife for decades?
Chico.
That's what they did. And so we need more of that. That's where the jobs are created. Something like 90% of new jobs in this country are created by smaller entrepreneurial business. Now, the one part that you want, every small business wants to become a larger business. Right? So we've got to also maybe get away. This country, it's big business. It's sort of like this broad brush. There are big businesses that are terrible and bad.
That's right.
And there are big businesses that are fantastic and great and do deeply care, just like there's anything or anybody that you got good and bad in. So, you want to grow. You want to have growth. I think businesses are like a tree. A tree is not stay the same. You're either growing or you're dying. You cannot stay the same. Because I'm good with this right here. That doesn't work.
Right. So in addition to investments in community banks and local banks, have you ever considered creating a fund to fund Detroit-based businesses?
We have. We put, in fact, right now we put outside of our just jobs and income tax and on property tax and all that stuff, we put about $30 million a year into neighborhoods, into businesses, into startup initiatives. James Chapman, where are you, James? Are you here? You're here. James is our entrepreneurial guy. We recruited all the way from Chattanooga, Tennessee, where they had a really successful entrepreneurial growth period there. James wasn't involved with, but he's in charge of all of our entrepreneurial efforts that we back and where they are. And I advise anybody's interested. James is the best man. He can give you crystal clear answers as to what we do, how we do it, what you should do, where all the capital is that he knows about. But we do have pieces. We don't have a formal, like you're saying, here's a fund like a bank. It's something we've talked about and debated around here because that capital could be recycled, right? If you think about it, if you do grants, it's a one-time capital. But if you have like a fund, you underwrite it well and you give it to great entrepreneurs who are making things happen, now that money becomes recycled, keeps coming back in. So it's probably it has that multiplier effect, and it's something we're looking at. But there are some other ones that we have right now that are very exciting.
Yep, good. So what's your next move?
Like after here?
Lunch?
Oh, yeah. Well, I'm not that hungry right now.
Getting away any trade secrets? Which are you? Going vertical?
Well, we look, Detroit is out of downtown Detroit, midtown Detroit, is out of office space and is out of residential space as far as occupancy goes. That's a great thing if we are going to build vertical capacity so we can keep growing. Like I was talking about earlier, being a tree and create the environment that allows people to work and buy these homes and live in neighborhoods and help those neighborhoods and so on, so on, so on. So you have to have growth, and that's what we're focused on right now as far as the physical assets, is creating excitement, creating, again, the conditions for businesses. Like right now, if you were to try to, I know this Madison building, this is the original Madison, the Madison building. And it's a crazy story because I just met the fine owner of this building. We were talking before. I said, I didn't even know that, we didn't name that other, it was already named the Madison building. And I said when I heard about this one, I heard it was a good operation. I said, maybe we should change the name of that one. And then there was all these people saying, you can't just, for 80 years, it's a theater and all this business. So, here we go. We got 2 Madison buildings. But I think that right now, if you were to try to get a meeting, let's say you were trying to get space at Cobo Center give me a random Thursday in November.
Right.
It's booked. You can't get it. We can't get it. Booked. I mean, all the conference space is booked.
It's a good sign.
The residential is filled. The offices. So we need to grow, and that creates tons of construction jobs, creates more people, again, who need to get in. Now, there's a whole point about points of entry, Steve, that we have to make sure Detroiters get the new jobs, and there's a whole discussion. We talked for 2 hours.
Yeah.
So,
But they enter at a lot of different levels, from the tech sector all the way down to the call center level. There's opportunities abound in all those spaces. The construction trades, we spent a lot of time working with Skilled Trades Task Force and President Jones's organization.
I think the vision, Steve, is whether it's not necessarily my personal vision, but it is. If you ask me, I'd say it. I believe in this, and I think probably the mayor does, and the council for sure does. And so every Detroiter who wants to work, in my opinion, we should have the conditions that there is something available for them, period. Now, it's not a guarantee, but it's a vision that if they want to, it's there. And I believe we can get there in a short period of time. I mean, I just do, and I think there's 4 places. Now, I'm not talking about for folks who graduate from colleges and have a lot of opportunity to them and can probably work not only in Detroit but in other places. But let's say you didn't for whatever reason, okay? But you're a good person, you want to work hard. So what do you do? How do you get in the door? So because we have seen this over and over again, somebody who did not go to college, sometimes even never graduated high school, or later on got their GED, come into our organization, do incredibly well, and climb up and making 6-figure incomes. We've seen it. We've seen people who graduated Harvard not make it. So and again, that's not the average is the percentage, but we've seen it. So it is also in business's best interest to make sure they're taking a look at everybody, because you're going to find people who absolutely just never got the at-bat, who can produce and create and do great for themselves and their families and the business at the same time. And so the 4 areas that I think are really important for a door of entry, like a point of entry. We have a call center business, for instance, called Rock Connection, just 2 years old, 3 years old. Victor, are you here somewhere? You're supposed to be here. 6, that's Detroit years. You know how that goes. Victor, how many people work at the call center right now? Okay, so all in Detroit, doing business, not just for our businesses, but for other big businesses that you can name here in Detroit, some out-of-state ones. So we have many, many Detroiters will come in. I believe, Victor, if I'm 10% off, don't stand up. If I'm 20% up, stand up and correct me, okay? But I think you start off with something like $12 to $15 an hour, plus full benefits, plus opportunity for commissions. And this is on the phone, inbound. This isn't calling outbound. This is inbound business for the most part. And it's also, there's now the companies that are social media, they want to communicate, so responding to emails, responding to texts, all this stuff. But more importantly, there's many people in that call center, many of them Detroiters, who have now gone and become bankers at Quicken Loans, or gone into other parts of the businesses, our business, or others who, again, came in, didn't have any kind of the credentials you normally need. So that's one, not just our, now I'm trying to convince like General Motors and the state of Michigan. I said, look, we got to eat our own dog food around here. Number one, these guys kill it. They'll convert better than anybody you've seen. They're just good at what they do. Number two, it's in Detroit, so why would we give some other place business outside of here? That's nuts, right? Number two, Was that a flag? Okay. So number two is that the good news is we're in a world where companies and wealth and jobs can be created much, much faster than the old world. So let's go back 30, 40 years. You want to create a large business with a lot of employees. You've got to build a plant, a big physical plant. So let's say from the time you think we're going to build this plant, and by the time it opens, you're probably 5 to 7 years, and you're probably $500 million in capital. Today, I want to create this technology business. Well, it costs you office space, computers, but there's not a plant. And once you get going, things can happen very, very quickly. So there's one company that we have that we started less than 2 years ago called StockX, which is the stock market of things right here in downtown Detroit. We're up to close to 300 people in less than 2 years. Very entrepreneurial from the start business. It's actually those of you any sneakerheads in the room? So you've traded on StockX. So it's an exchange. But now we moved into street clothing. We moved into handbags, into watches, where you literally have a bid and offer, buyers and sellers. It's a very cool thing. It's one of my favorite businesses. But my point is, that was less than 2 years, and now it's really growing like a hockey stick. Silicon Valley investors have now committed to invest in this business, unheard of in Detroit. Things can happen. People have ideas. You get an urban core, you start talking to different people, and you have conversations you otherwise wouldn't have, everybody's the same in an office park on asphalt. Whole different deal. Yeah. Today, ideas create businesses. It's a brain economy, and we can move along much quicker and faster as long as you can keep up what we say with the speed of the game.
So we're running out of time, and I want to be respectful.
I'm really talking a lot.
Yeah,
today,
you are.
Sorry,
man. I'm trying to. But in any event, I want to close, be respectful for the conference here. So let me close by asking. So it's 2018. Where do you see Detroit 5 years from now, 10 years from now?
So the 20s. At least we have a decade we can name. We can all refer to it again after 20 years. So we're in the 20s, right? I always ask my kids, what are you going to say when you're older? Like back when I grew up in the, let's say it's 2000, 2010. There's no name for it. I just think it's
missing
a problem,
decade.
just a personal problem. Okay, so first of all, this city 5 to 10 years from now, not only will there be some brand new, incredible, beautiful buildings, and when you look outside, you'll see cranes. See cranes. That's an optimistic thing to see cranes. I'm not talking about that thing you get on Monday morning. I'm talking about cranes. Okay. So real cranes, physical cranes, things. When a city is healthy and be building, you're going to see hopefully a situation. It would be my dream, and I think a lot of others. Again, like I said earlier, any Detroiter who has a desire to work, there is places that they can go and get into the game. Just enter the game. There's a way for them to get into the game. The third area was that hospitality area. Yep. People are short hospitality workers with all these hotels opening up.
Service industry.
Becoming a technology person. You quickly, just I was talking about earlier, you quickly can become a technology person. Like 100. There's all these programs now, going for 120, 180 days of training. You're not going to be the number one software coder in the world when you come out. But let me tell you something. Businesses are so in need of tech people. Those folks are being hired very quickly, okay? And that can happen, and you don't need a college degree for that. So my point is, you'd have the ecosystem that anyone in Detroit wants to work, has a way to get in. It's one of the best entrepreneurial growth cities in the world. In America, there's new buildings. The neighborhoods are thriving. All the blight, which they're getting there, right? I mean, most of the blight are half or 60%. Looks like it's down, and people are not afraid of the crime statistics, which have been going the right way for years, but really there's a ways to go there. So we get over that hump, and of course the last piece is the education piece, which we're involved with. I'll give you one little quick thing that a business can do. We're not going to run the school system. It's not our job. It's not what we know about. But we heard that 35 to 40% of sixth graders. This is crazy. This is a crazy statement, but we verified it. We talked to many of them ourselves, who live in the city at the time, this is like 2 years ago, had never been downtown Detroit. Never, not once. So now we have a program. We take every sixth grader through the entire, we tour them through our buildings. We have to motivate people. We have to show them hope. We have to walk them through. It's one thing to look outside of the buildings. It's another thing to look inside and to see people, some who look like them, some who don't look like them, young people, older people, but they're working They're excited. The ecosystem's healthy. They know there's hope. They know if they stay in school or if they train themselves through one of these other ways or get training, that there's an opportunity for them. They have to see it. So we are making sure that every sixth grader comes through. And it's things like that that you can do to support that piece of it. And so I'm just hoping everything continues. And I think that let's go back in a time machine, Steve. Let's go back to 2010. If somebody were to show any of us, including me, what is happening, and it's not perfect, and we all know that, and we know we have a ways to go, but I don't think anybody would believe this.
No.
So, I think we
were
keep
just
going.
representing 5,000 kids, DPS school students that came through that program, and our goal is to double that in the following years. Part of the newness coming also, let's not forget the construction and skilled trades workers, because that point of entry is accessible. We alone are, we have $2.5 billion invested in the real estate today downtown. We're moving into a new area, going vertical, new construction, and we've made a pledge for $2.1 billion more, which creates 15,000 new jobs here in Detroit. So 15,000 from us alone, and we're just one entity. So I tell people all the time about the construction trades, you have not missed that train. And Jason knows well, better than anybody in this room likely, how this works. There's work for everyone for a long time in the construction trades, if that's your thing.
I'll tell you, I would almost consider it a failure. I would consider it a failure that we build all these buildings and that we are short skilled trades, and we are short. I'm talking to all the construction guys that are getting everything teed up and ready to go, because we pound the table on this. I mean, you've got to find in any way, shape, or form, Detroiters first. I know the 50% is the goal, but maybe even more than that if it's possible. And you can't do it because there's lack of the skilled trades. So I know the mayor knows this, the county knows this, the state knows this, and there's some things in the works with the unions and others, but we got it. That one is like the most urgent of all, because what a shame it would be to build these buildings. There was a book, I said this in a speech the other day, about a guy it was in New York, and I forgot some of our folks know the name of the guy who wrote the book, or the radio guy, Studs Terkel. There's a radio guy, and he used to interview people just on the street, and he talked to this worker in New York who was looking up at one of the buildings. He had worked with his own hands as a construction guy, and they had them sign their names onto somewhere on the building, and he was talking to his grandkids or something. He pointed out, I said, see, between the 4th and 5th floor, my name is sketched in there, because we all worked on this and erected this building together, and he was proud of it, and it matters. It all matters. And so we got a lot of work to do there, because we have to make sure that goes right.
Last question. Cavs going to make it back to the finals?
Yeah, sure. Let's start tonight. I didn't used to have this conflict with the Pistons until they became a Detroit team this year.
Right.
Like when people would ask me in the past, they go, don't you feel funny you're doing all this Detroit stuff and you have the Cleveland team? I say, well, Detroit doesn't have a basketball team. But now I can't say that anymore. And so, but yes, we get the win against Toronto tonight, then we'll take it from there. You remember I tried to predict things 8 years ago. That was a big, big mistake. I won't do that again. Right. So but we're taking it one at a time.
Good. Thanks, man.
All right, thank you. Thank you.